All right. Hello, everyone. Good evening, and thanks for being with us tonight here on The Hill. I'm Blake Burman. So help is on the way. That is the message from President Trump today to Iranians, braving a sweeping crackdown as they fight for freedom.
To all Iranian patriots, keep protesting, take over your institutions if possible.
What we are learning at this hour about a big national security meeting over at the White House, plus a much different set of tensions rising here at home. Why federal officers today deployed tear gas in Minneapolis, as President Trump says the day of reckoning is coming. Also this evening, out on the road, the president making his sales pitch on his economic vision, saying the new numbers show that his plan is working. And tracking your miles? Is one state about to try to lower how much you drive? The new goal that could very well be coming to one of America's largest states. But first tonight, the Motor City pit stop. President Trump touting his economy, pushing back on criticism while visiting a Ford factory in Detroit, Michigan, giving a lengthy speech shortly afterwards.
Inflation is defeated. America is respected again like never before. Grocery prices are starting to go rapidly down. Rent is down. Airfares are down. Hotel rates are down. Cell phone prices are down. And we're just getting started.
The president pumping the brakes on inflation as the government reported prices over the past year rose by a total of 2.7%. Still, everyday items and necessities like electricity and gas to heat your home, for example, much higher than that. We begin tonight with our Jessica Cartalia, following a president who is trying to sell his economic vision to the American public. Hello, Jessica.
Hi, Blake. Yeah, we're in beautiful downtown Detroit, and that was certainly the message today. He talked about everything. He talked about Venezuela. He talked about the auto industry here in Detroit. He talked about Ford, GM, and Stellantis expanding their reach here in the U.S. Stellantis by 50%. He also talked about gas prices being down and gave himself a pat on the back for the way that the Maduro situation was handled in Venezuela. He also talked about America being the hottest country in the world and says economically we have never seen numbers so good. This morning, as we know, new inflation data showed that prices rose 0.3% last month and are still up 2.7% over the past year. That's still above the Fed's target, but not accelerating. Meanwhile, affordability, cost of living, inflation, all determining issues for voters in the midterms and all topics that he brought up today during his speech. Detroit, as we know, is the heart of labor and the American auto industry. And while the cost of cars is way up, last year, more than 27,000 jobs were lost in the auto manufacturing industry. So Michigan is a swing state. It's so important that we're here. This economic anxiety really hitting home here today for the president. He also went to a Ford factory where he spoke with several people there. President talked about domestic production and keeping jobs right here in the U.S.
Under our administration, growth is exploding, productivity is soaring, investment is booming, incomes are rising, inflation is defeated, America is respected again like never before.
And of course, Blake, the fact that the speech took place here in Detroit was certainly not by accident, but very strategic, all in an effort to win back these blue-collar voters.
Our Jessica Cartalia, live tonight, Detroit, Michigan. Jessica, thank you. Meantime, nearby here in Washington, the nation's high court, hearing arguments today over whether states can ban transgender athletes from participating in women's sports. Today's arguments focusing on cases from Idaho and West Virginia, with big implications for the nearly 30 states that have similar bans in place. Our Hannah Brandt live for us tonight on this big case before the high court. Hannah.
Yeah, big case is right, Blake. And hundreds of people came out to the Supreme Court for dueling rallies. I was there for that. And I talked to many of these people who told me they really think these two cases have the potential to have a major impact for student athletes all over the U.S., not just these two states. Now, at the heart of the case are two lawsuits brought by transgender athletes in Idaho and West Virginia, like you mentioned. These lawsuits challenge the state bans in place there that ban transgender athletes from playing on women's teams in schools. Now, in front of justices, they argued those laws violate the Constitution's Equal Protection Clause and Title IX, which, as we know, prohibits sex discrimination in education. But on the other side, lawyers for Idaho and West Virginia defended their bans. They told the high court this is all about fairness and about protecting biological women and girls. They were backed in court by the Trump administration, and the justices who make up the conservative majority made some comments that suggested they're going to side with them upholding those bans. Now, lawyers on both sides talked about how exactly they were feeling after arguments wrapped up.
Are you feeling confident at this point that the justices were persuaded by your arguments?
We definitely think they heard our arguments, and I heard a lot of things that I was really encouraged about today. We hope that the court will uphold the right that girls can compete in their own sports fairly and safely.
What's at issue in this case is fair treatment for all people, including cis people and trans people.
A total of 27 states across the country do have similar bans on trans athletes, so the rulings here in these cases could have national consequences, but we aren't expecting those decisions until early summer. Blake?
Hannah Brandt, live for us tonight. Hannah, thank you. Now to Iran and the situation there. In just the past couple hours, we're told the Vice President, J.D. Vance, met with the president's national security team to discuss potential next steps on the growing protests against the Iranian regime. The move comes after President Trump today urged Iranians to keep protesting, adding that help is on the way.
The message is they've got to show humanity. They've got a big problem, and I hope they're not going to be killing people. And I'm going to have a report very soon. It would seem to me that they have been badly misbehaving.
Our Kelly Meyer, live for us tonight, live on the North Lawn. Kelly, we heard the commander-in-chief there talk about this report that he might have very soon. He just got back to the White House, went into the Oval Office, and there were some pictures there of him immediately being handed a stack of papers, and you got to wonder if that's what's on the president's plate this evening.
Exactly. I was walking back from the South Lawn over here to our spot on the North Lawn, and you could see President Trump inside the Oval Office. He was passed a stack of papers, and I snapped some pictures of that. We can't confirm exactly what those papers were, but he did say he would be reviewing intel on the Iranian government killing protesters as soon as he got back, and he said, quote, "will act accordingly."
Iran is on my mind when I see the kind of death that is happening over there, we think. So we're going to get some accurate numbers. I'll have it in about 20 minutes. We'll get some accurate numbers as to what's happening with regard to the killing.
Now, the Marine sentry, Blake, still outside of the West Wing now, so that indicates the president is still in the West Wing, still in the Oval Office at the top of this hour. A source familiar also tells me his vice president, J.D. Vance, was leading a meeting of national security principals just before President Trump got back. And a Vance spokesperson told me earlier that Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio are presenting a range of options from diplomatic to military and are presenting those, they say, without bias. And that comes after a Wall Street Journal report that Vance was pushing for a diplomatic route here. And the spokesperson tells me, quote, the Wall Street Journal's reporting is not accurate. I also asked President Trump's top economic advisor about the 25% tariff that President Trump put on countries trading with Iran. He says he hasn't seen an impact just yet. Blake?
Kelly Meyer, live for us tonight on the North Lawn of the White House. Kelly, thank you. With us now, retired Lieutenant General Richard Newton, NewsNation senior national security contributor. General, always nice to see you, and it could be a consequential, well, it has been very consequential for Iran in the recent days, and we see now what President Trump could potentially do going forward. I wonder what you think is on the plate for the president tonight, because he said today help is on the way. He told the Iranians to keep protesting, and he said that talks are off with Iran. It's 2:09 in the morning there in the Middle East. What do you believe comes next?
Well, first and foremost, consequential is a great word, Blake, not only for the Iranian people, but certainly for the United States as the president now mulls over. I think what Kelly's referring to, that stack of papers, is obviously intelligence reports as well as potentially target folders. I don't know. I'm not there, but I can imagine what the president's looking at this evening, especially there in the Oval Office and certainly in the West Wing where the White House Situation Room is. I've been in there before. at the White House sit room. And so I have to imagine that he's mulling over options that, as Vice President Vance led the effort today, I guarantee you, U.S. Central Command has provided him a wider range of options in terms of targeting options and so forth, as well as means to execute what the president decides to move forward with. Final point is, I believe, you and I have talked about this before. We're moving up, I believe, the escalatory ladder. Tariffs announced yesterday, could be additional sanctions, could be other aspects, could be offensive cyber capabilities. Certainly, military strike options are on the table. I know that's exactly what the president's thinking about right now.
So on that front, you have essentially separated this, General, into 3 buckets of what the options could be. Obviously, it's a wide array if the president chooses to go down that route. But here's the buckets sort of that you separate this into. 1, taking out air defenses. 2, destroying ballistic missiles and space launch capabilities. And 3, drones. If you can go one by one, explain, please.
Absolutely. First and foremost, the last strike in Iran was on June 22nd with those 7 B-2 bombers and 30 Tomahawk cruise missiles and over 100 aircraft, from the United States. Fast forward, you have to be concerned about air defenses if they've had any type of ability to build back up their air defenses. I don't anticipate it to be as strong as it had been in several years past, but that is first and foremost in my thought process moving forward. What does their air defense systems look like? And then you fast forward into other capabilities that could be provided to the president to consider. That is their ballistic missile weapons capability. You go back to the December 29th meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu just south of here at Mar-a-Lago, met with the president, and one of the topics was the ballistic missile capability that Iran still has and that threatens Israel as well as our other Gulf allies there. That has got to be near the top of the list also. And then the drone manufacturing production capability. Iran really produces an outstanding array of drones. The Shahed drones are being used with Russia against Ukraine and so forth. I would go after the drone manufacturing facilities as well. That also is an economic boon for Iran. They can export this capability and actually, they'll bring in monies, as they sell their capabilities here. So all that wrapped up there. Go ahead, Blake.
Yeah, no, I'm just sitting back listening to you, and as I watch the videos, and we're talking about Iran and the Middle East in general, you just walked me through taking out the air defenses, destroying ballistic missiles, and the use of drones. And I got to imagine there's some folks watching us tonight here on News Nation or listening to us at this moment on Sirius XM who might be thinking something along the lines of the Middle East, weapons, intervention, the commander-in-chief, strike options, and who might not feel comfortable with going down that road again. What would you say to them?
Well, first, this is just options that the president is going to be considering. I'm not suggesting that it's a final decision at this point. However, I believe where we're at right now, but let me back up. 45 years of tyranny under the brutal regime of the theocracy led by 2 ayatollahs, arriving at this point now where you've got the largest demonstration of opposition in nearly 4+ decades is happening right now. You have an Iranian economy that's near collapse, and you've got thousands and thousands of protesters, not just in Tehran, but across Iran. Iran's about the size of Alaska with 85 to 90 million people. And so I believe in the best interests of certainly the Iranian people as they're protesting here. This isn't just to change or to try to transform the regime. This is to overthrow the regime. So we're at a critical moment now. It's got to be done, however, internally by the Iranian people, as we're seeing the demonstration in the streets and across the Iran, the nation state itself. But it has to be supported by a United States, I believe, as the United States. If we're going to lead in the Mideast, if we're going to guarantee a greater future for not only Iran, but for the Mideast and to have a more peaceful Mideast moving forward, the United States has to provide this capability. And I would underscore the fact that sometimes the only opportunity here, that really means something is to provide strength and support these people in the streets.
All right, we'll see what happens here. As the White House and the president often says, Lieutenant General Richard Newton, appreciate the insight and perspective with us tonight. We'll talk to you again soon. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Blake.
Of course, here on the Hill. First, it was you drive. Now it's how much you drive. Coming up, why some states are pushing to potentially track your mileage. And breaking at this moment, after going missing for several days, a Hollywood director turns himself in to face child sex abuse charges. The latest on that story, plus chaos in the streets of Minnesota, protests heating up as President Trump promises a day of reckoning is coming.
You are not following the law.
All right, so we saw President Trump in the state of Michigan today, the auto capital of America. He was in Detroit as the president pitched his economy, essentially. And as all that is happening, one state could be considering pumping the brakes on how much you drive. Several blue states, including Massachusetts, now looking at monitoring personal vehicle mileage. The goal to cut down driving to meet climate goals in some cases. Now, the proposal in Massachusetts mirrors bills in states like Minnesota, California, Oregon, Washington, Illinois, Michigan as well. But critics are raising concerns about potential fees and whether or not this is a good idea. Kurt Bardella, NewsNation contributor, Democratic strategist, and Lauren Wright, NewsNation political contributor, Princeton University professor, with me now here on the Hill. Kurt, Lauren, hello to you both. So this is a bill. Let me focus on Massachusetts, right? This is a bill in Massachusetts. It's called the Freedom to Move Act that would basically require the Department of Transportation there to set goals for reducing the number of statewide driving miles, which would then be considered basically when the environmental office there sets greenhouse gas emissions. Okay, so that's part of what it would try to accomplish there. You know what we do here, Kurt, ladies first. So Lauren, thoughts?
That's fine with me. How badly do Democrats want to inconvenience normal working people and lose elections? That's really the question. Clearly, it's very badly, because I feel terrible for these electric vehicle owners. They've been great environmentalists. They bought into this electrify or die thing. And the exchange was in these blue states, hey, buy this expensive car, but you'll save a lot on gas and you'll get a tax rebate. Now all of that is gone. They're going to end up with a tax anyway, and it's really just not fair. Why is it gone? Because electric vehicle uptake has not been high enough. It's 9% of vehicles out there, only 20% of new cars. So now they're extending the cost to everybody, and I feel bad for them. That's the group I think is really sorry.
Kurt?
Well, first of all, some of these incentives went away because Republicans rolled them back. So that was done to them, not something that they expected or voted for. Number two, all this bill does really is create an interagency council to study, underline the word, study ways to be less car dependent and to promote things like walking and public transit. There's nothing new in this bill that goes into effect that creates a tax. There's nothing new in this bill that inconveniences a single driver right now on the roads of Massachusetts. It's about meeting climate goals for 2050. An interagency study. I mean, it doesn't get more bureaucratic and harmless than that.
Is there a slippery slope, though, here, Kurt? Like, it's one thing to be like, okay, there's a drought, so you can't water the front lawn on a Tuesday and a Thursday. And I'm not saying that this is where this is going, but if you're looking at maybe we look at monitoring miles driven to match climate standards, could you see a world where maybe this moves further than you think?
I mean, I think anytime government has the reins of power, things can move and escalate, as we see every single day right now with the use of government power. But I don't think there's any harm in getting information, in getting data. Let's actually get facts, God forbid, and statistics before we make policy decisions rather than the other way around.
Lauren, I'll give you the last word.
But Kurt knows, as the brilliant strategist he is, better than anyone. Republicans will take this. They'll run with it in the midterms, just like the gas stove thing being taken away. They'll say now they want to tax everybody and track your miles, and it's a privacy concern. It's a made-for-TV ad for the GOP, and that's another problem for Democrats, regardless.
I agree with Lauren that I'm brilliant.
We'll leave it there. Kurt Bardella, Lauren Wright, we'll follow up with what's going on there in Massachusetts. Great to see you both. Talk soon. All right. Still to come here, and at this hour right now, tensions continuing to flare in the Twin Cities. Anti-ICE protests turning violent there. Pepper balls used today. President Trump doubling down on his immigration crackdown. We are live in Minneapolis with the very latest there. And as the White House eyes Greenland, a bipartisan group of lawmakers gearing up to oppose the president's takeover ambitions. They're headed overseas to talk to the main leaders there. Congresswoman Madeleine Dean, in the middle of it all, joins us live. All right, just about 6:30 here on the East Coast. Here's some of the stories that we are monitoring right now coming into our newsroom. It's 5:30 in Minnesota as well, and in Minneapolis, chaotic scenes unfolding in the wake of last week's ICE-involved shooting. Protesters once again clashing with officers. You can see here angry crowds screaming at agents outside a federal building in Minneapolis. Officers firing pepper spray in return. In another instance, a woman yanked from her vehicle as she drove into a protest near an ICE raid. All of this as the administration is now doubling down on its immigration efforts there, reportedly sending in another 1,000 officers to the Twin Cities. President Trump today defending the operation during a speech in Michigan.
Our ICE operation in Minnesota, for example, is finding hundreds of killers, violent predators, and child rapists, some of the worst criminal offenders anywhere in the world, murderers all over the place. All we want to do is get them out.
Our Allie Bradley live for us once again in Minneapolis this evening. Allie, hello. You've been there for a week now covering this. What have you seen this evening?
Yeah, so tonight we have new fencing up around the entire federal building, but we also have a pretty sizable group still out here saying ICE out, wanting these federal law enforcement individuals to get out of the city. So let me just move out of the way. You can kind of see what's going on here. We've seen waves of what I call escalation, where whenever federal law enforcement come out, whether it's in a vehicle or on foot, tensions really rise really quickly, and the group gets closer to the building. The officers push back against the group. Tear gas is deployed, pepper balls are deployed, flashbangs, a lot of less lethal munitions out here. But just moments ago, there was a guy who was out here who was actually kicking the vehicles as they were coming and going from this federal building, and they surged out here and they arrested him. Making this arrest, you're looking at that video right now when they came out and just started spraying pepper balls at this crowd. What's really interesting, watch the guy in the camouflage go around the backside of this guy kind of casually, and then they make the arrest right there. They bring that guy into custody for kicking those federal vehicles. Another clash earlier today near the shooting scene. This is the one where that woman was dragged out of her vehicle. Our cameras captured the moments ahead of that where several officers, they were in a convoy, and so sources say they were conducting targeted enforcement operations. There were at least 30 officers on scene. Their cars were blocked in. They deployed flashbangs and pepper balls. They ended up pulling that woman out of her car and arresting her. They say she was impeding. She said she was just trying to get to a doctor's appointment. Many are calling for an end to the federal deployment here. A lawsuit was even filed by Minnesota to halt the deployment of more resources, but they're still en route to the tune of 1,000 additional agents, bringing that number to 3,000 across the Twin Cities in Minnesota. This, as DHS is pointing the finger at the state, saying 470 criminal illegal immigrants have been released to the streets because of sanctuary policies. DHS is calling on Governor Walz to cooperate with ICE and honor the arrest detainers of more than 1,360 people currently in custody. Now, we can tell you that more than 2,000 individuals have already been arrested under Operation Metro Surge. This began November 29th. And again, that's before those 2,000 agents and officers. That's before the additional 1,000 that were really coming here. We saw those numbers, though, climb substantially. We're looking at over 100, like 150 a day on average that they're arresting right now, Blake. And I can tell you before I let you go here, I talked with Commander-at-Large Chief Gregory Bovino. Assaults and attacks against them are up as well. He said him and his crew are constantly being assaulted. He said he's also getting word that they're trying to assassinate him. He said he's on high alert, but it's not going to stop them from operating. He said, quote, they're going to turn and burn. Blake.
Wow. All right. Some of the rhetoric there tonight. Allie Bradley in Minnesota for us once again. Allie, thank you. Breaking this evening. And coming into our newsroom, the Emmy Award-winning actor and director Timothy Busfeld has surrendered to police over child sex abuse claims, but not before releasing a video in which he calls the claims lies and says he will be exonerated. U.S. Marshals joined New Mexico police in the search after an arrest warrant was issued on Friday. Police say the West Wing actor engaged in the conduct with 11-year-old boys on the set of a Fox show that he was directing in 2024. Back here up on Capitol Hill, the House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer revealing he will move forward with contempt of Congress proceedings against the former President Bill Clinton. after Clinton failed to appear for a deposition today as part of the panel's investigation into Jeffrey Epstein.
As a result of Bill Clinton not showing up for his lawful subpoena, which again was voted on unanimously by the committee in a bipartisan manner, we will move next week in the House Oversight Committee markup to hold former President Clinton in contempt of Congress.
Hillary Clinton also subpoenaed to testify Wednesday, but attorneys for the Clintons say the subpoena was, quote, invalid. Over at the White House now, the Vice President, J.D. Vance, and the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, gearing up for a meeting on Wednesday with the foreign ministers from Greenland and Denmark. The president has reignited his push to take control, as you know, of the Arctic island in recent days, he says, for national security reasons.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to make a deal with them. It's easier. But one way or the other, we're going to have Greenland.
Now, in light of the president's push, a bipartisan group of lawmakers is set to head overseas this week to meet with the leaders of Denmark and Greenland. One of those is the Democratic Congresswoman Madeleine Dean, back with us live once again here on the Hill. Congresswoman, nice to see you. Thanks for stopping on in before you get on the plane and head abroad. Tell me why you're going over there and what you hope to accomplish.
Good evening, Blake. Good to be with you, and thank you for all of that troubling reporting. Yes, a bipartisan and bicameral CODEL is going to Copenhagen this weekend to say that we are your allies, we are your friends, and to reaffirm our support for NATO, for Denmark, for the Kingdom of Denmark. The remarks of the president are inexplainable to me, and I wish that our Republican counter members here in the House and in the Senate would explain that to the president. I've had the chance to go to Denmark to meet with the prime minister back in the summer of 24. They are baffled by the president's rhetoric, by his desire and coveting of Greenland. After all, we have had a 200-year relationship with the Kingdom of Denmark, decades of economic and military cooperation.
Right.
The historic NATO agreements following and UN agreements following World War II. All of that is at risk with the slippery words of this president and his desire for Greenland.
I hear you. I want to play for our audience some of the reasoning from President Trump. He said this the other day. We'll pick it up on the other side.
If we don't take Greenland, Russia or China will take Greenland, and I am not going to let that happen.
I hear your concerns about Greenland and Denmark. You represent parts of Pennsylvania. And the President of the United States is saying, you know what? If we don't do this, Russia or China will. Is he right there?
The part of that that the president is correct about is that Greenland is strategically in an important location on the globe. And Greenland knows it, Denmark knows it, the kingdom knows it. And guess what? We have a role to play there. We have a base there. As I talked to the Prime Minister more than a year ago, she reminded me that, she said very plainly, the President is welcome to invest here in Greenland because of its strategic importance in the region against China and Russia.
So should we cut a deal?
We had 18 bases there. We had 18, it's not a deal. It's do what we do as allies and partners. We had 18 bases there. We removed all of them. We are down to one. They invite our investment, our military cooperation. But do you know how dangerous it is for the president to say we're simply going to take it? That would break the NATO alliance. It would trigger Article 5 if we did military involvement there. And I want to raise something that's really critical and breaks my heart. The Kingdom of Denmark, fought alongside us as Article 5 was triggered with the war in Iraq and Afghanistan following 9/11. They fought alongside us. They died alongside us. They lost 50 soldiers. That's more per capita than any other nation. So the president is irresponsible and simply doesn't understand his history or geography.
Congresswoman, we saw President Trump go into Venezuela and the capture of Nicolas Maduro. Before it, the president was saying that this was about drugs. And afterwards, we've heard a lot about oil. And the reason I bring it up is because the president has talked about this as Greenland, as a matter of national security. I just played you the sound. But the other reality for Greenland is this. They have as much, essentially, rare earth elements as the United States when you look at the list. And these are the things that power our cell phones, power our fighter jets, everything in between. When you look at the list, the U.S. and Greenland are stacked back to back when it comes to rare earth reserves. Is it possible that what the president actually wants here is to get the U.S. on a better footing against China with rare earths?
Well, Blake, you looked under the ice. You're absolutely right. It is about rare earths. It is about resources. He sees dollar signs in his eyes, whether it's the rare earths there or the oil in Venezuela. And look what happened with Venezuela. As exquisite as the military action was, and as right as it is that Mr. Maduro and his wife are treated with justice, it was immediately about oil. The president revealed that in the press conference immediately following the operation. And guess what has happened now? You heard what the CEO of Exxon said? It is uninvestable. That did not please the president. But you're on to what the president's all about. This is not about talking to our allies. This is about resources there.
Certainly what the president said. I would also note other CEOs are also willing to go in there. I got to leave it there. Congresswoman Madeleine Dean heading overseas to take on this issue. You heard her live there. Congresswoman, nice to see you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Still to come.
Thank you, Blake.
Here, yes, of course, here on the Hill. President Trump rolling into the Motor City today, telling Americans, in his view, the economy is doing better. But as he addresses the issue in Michigan, we're asking, is the Trump economy working? Remember all those dire predictions about tariffs and what it might do to inflation? We're looking at it now.
Everybody makes money with me. I always made money for people. Now it's tariffs that are making money for Michigan, and the entire country is stronger and safer and richer than ever before.
President Trump out on the road in Michigan today, touting his economy, talking tariffs on the exact same day that we got a read on inflation. And would you know it, 1 year compared to a year ago, with tariffs fully in effect, 6 months after Liberation Day, turns out the inflation rate lower than a year ago. Full panel here with me now. Julia Manchester, White House reporter for The Hill. Lindsey Granger, News Nation contributor, co-host of Rising on the Hill, doing double duty with us today. And T.W. Origi back once again, former communications aide to Republican Senator Lindsey Graham. Hello to you both. Thanks for being here.
How's it going?
Hi, Julia. We saw the president out on the road today in Michigan, trying to sell his economy.
Trying to sell his economy ahead of the midterms. The problem for President Trump, and of course, yes, inflation is down from last year, holding steady from last month, including core inflation. But the problem for President Trump and Republicans is right now, according to polls, Americans aren't feeling that. They're still feeling the squeeze in their pocketbooks. They're still feeling higher prices. So it's sort of like what the Biden administration, the Biden campaign, the Harris campaign went through last year. They're not able to draw that line between what the numbers are and how people are feeling.
Julia is absolutely right. That's what the polling shows. I also look at gas prices, Lindsey, down compared to what it was a year ago. I look at inflation, 2.7%, down compared to where it was a year ago. Mortgage rates under 6%. But I heard a whole lot of doomsday predictions on tariffs, that the economy was going to go up in flames. And here we are, and it hasn't.
I think the best thing for President Trump will be if the Supreme Court strikes down his tariffs. I think that we haven't seen any benefits from the tariffs. We haven't seen any huge repercussions, but we do also see like companies like Costco suing the administration because they say their prices directly have risen because of these tariffs. So even though you may not see the economy in decline, you'll see that many people and Americans that shop at these everyday stores or try to make everyday purchases or even big purchases like cars, automobiles that he threatened tariffs over and the prices were going up and down are going to be affected by some of these dramatic policies that he's putting forward.
Jobs is, Julia's right, the polling, TW, shows that the president can't sell it, right? People don't feel it. Jobs is the other one. I see the inflation print today, and it's better than it was a year ago, but when you look at the job situation, it's one of the worst this century when you take out COVID and the great financial crisis.
Yeah, unemployment's sitting at about 4.4%. I've been saying since day one that Rome wasn't built in a day.
And you have said that nonstop on the show.
You mentioned what has tariffs done. Well, economists across the globe have been saying that many of the importers and the producers are actually eating most of the costs. So that's why you're not seeing a lot passed on to the consumer. But let's be honest with each other. Our trade deficit has been cut in half in just a couple of months. On top of that, the economy grew by 5.4% last quarter. That's 3 consecutive massive growth quarters for the United States.
It was also negative at one point earlier.
The first quarter of the administration, but the last 3 quarters have been. It is tremendous growth that we're seeing here. So what I see is this oncoming wave of good feeling. You are right. People aren't feeling it right now, but when these start to take root, and the no tax on tips, the no tax on overtime, the no tax on Social Security, all these things start hitting the road, people will start feeling it right in time for the midterms.
How much longer does he have?
Till the midterms.
How much longer does he have?
I don't think he has much time at all. People are waiting, and I think they have looked at him as the businessman in chief, or saying maybe he doesn't know business that well after all. It's like the same thing as Biden happening that you mentioned, is that Biden was telling us, you feel relief, things are better. People are telling you, no, we don't. Right. And I think that President Trump has to explain that and explain why this person that campaigned on changing the economy and how poorly Biden did is making people feel exactly the same way.
How much longer do we have?
I've heard July, September.
Feels somewhere in there, right?
Yeah, around there.
All right, meantime, a new poll out this week. Could it be a wake-up call to Republicans? Could it be a wake-up call to Democrats? How about this? Gallup shows that a record number of American adults now identify as politically independent. What's going on here?
Look, I think even though they're identifying as independent and maybe rejecting the party label, they're still leaners and there's still target audiences for both parties. I mean, if you just look at Gen Z, for example, last election, Generation Z does not like the label of a political party. They don't seem to like labels in general. However, they, in the last election, leaned more to the right. So there's still leaners here. I think it's just a rejection maybe of these institutions.
I look at people like Joe Rogan, who has a really young male audience, and, you know, he swayed from Bernie Sanders to President Trump. And I think that people are tired of some of the partisan games and some of the older politicians that stay in office and continue to do the same thing. And I think that young people are telling you that we are not blindly allegiant to any party. We're going to go with whoever's speaking to our interests. And I think we're going to see that more and more, because in the poll, millennials and Gen Z were the most represented.
Millennials and Gen Z you're basically 20 to 45, depending on if you're a millennial or Gen Z. They were right at 55% independent. What's going on here?
Yeah, I think you guys are roughly around the point there. People want nuance.
Comma but?
No, people want nuance. I mean, look, I think a lot of people loved Donald Trump as somebody who couldn't be bought, and he bucked the party system in terms of taking positions that weren't typically Republican. The problem he had was people just didn't like Donald Trump and the way he spoke and the way he acts. But I think most people are just sick of the left going further left, the right going further right, no one talking to each other, and no one's a happy warrior. I think that was one of Zoran's gifts when he ran for mayor, was he came off as happy and a pleasant person to be around. That actually is worth something, and people are done with the hatred and the animosity. They want to feel good about their politics.
I did not have you complimenting Zoran Mamdani on the bingo card for how
That's about where it ends, my friend. That's about where it ends.
We'll leave it there. TW, Lindsay, Julia. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Still to come. Skyrocketing healthcare premiums, putting millions of Americans at risk when it comes to their healthcare. Plus, forget the cheap seats. There aren't any. When we return. All right, if you're just getting home, trying to catch up on today's top stories, here's some Hill headlines before we head out this evening. We start with this. Early ACA numbers, that's Obamacare, show drastic drop in enrollment. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services reporting that about 800,000 fewer people are signed up for Obamacare insurance plans this year compared to last. The enhanced subsidies expired at the end of last year, sending premiums skyrocketing for millions of Americans who use those plans. Then there's this. The former Navy sailor sentenced for selling information to China. 25-year-old. Sentenced to serve more than 16 years in prison after being convicted of giving pictures and documents to his Chinese handler for $12,000. Speaking of money, there's this. The cheapest ticket, Hill headline tonight, cheapest ticket to college football national championship tops $3,000. Sports fans looking for the cheap seats at next week's championship game might be disappointed. The least expensive ticket for that showdown between Indiana and Miami will run you more than $3 grand. A good reason to watch this one from home. I'm telling you, I grew up in South Florida in Miami, going to the Orange Bowl on Saturdays, went to college in the Big Ten. Even though this game's in Miami, there's going to be more IU fans. That's what I think. They're going to have to pay. To check out those stories and more, all you have to do, head on over to thehill.com. You also can scan that QR code on your screen. I write for the morning report in our newsletter every day. All right, speaking of the Big Ten, hello, finally, from our hill to yours, to the great people of Farmington Hills, Michigan, where you may have noticed slightly more traffic than usual in nearby Detroit today, as President Trump made a speech just a few hours ago. The latest stop on his unofficial affordability tour, the president addressed the Economic Club of Detroit, the third time he has done so as president. The speech coincided with the auto show there. Of course, Detroit is a symbol of not only the American automotive industry, but also of American manufacturing. The president made a stop, as you can see here, at a Ford F-150 plant. So to everyone there in Farmington Hills, Michigan, hello tonight from our hill to yours. Elizabeth Vargas reports coming up next here on News Nation. She'll be speaking live with West Virginia's Attorney General about the Supreme Court arguments on transgender athletes in sports. The Supreme Court took that up today. Elizabeth starts in 15 seconds from now. I leave you here with a live look over at the White House because President Trump right now, we still believe, is in the Oval Office. The big question about Iran and what he might do there. As our coverage continues here on News Nation, I'm Blake Burman. Elizabeth starts now.